There is a saying that when you take right kind of food, there is no need for medicine. But if you don't do that, then your medicine will become your food. You'll be taking just a bunch of drugs and supplements to sustain yourself.
We know that our guts are basically miniature pharmaceutical factories, and everyone's microbiome is actually incredibly different. But the point that, the gut-brain access is something that's really new and emerging.
If you are depressed, your gut feels the depression. If you don't have the right kind of bacteria, then probably you get a higher chance of getting a depression. We usually just think about gut as microbiome, but it's not just that, right? It starts from the soil. And this has been studied, and they basically found out in US markets, there is a 70% variance within the carrots found in different supermarkets. Doctors might say, okay, eating carrots are good, but that's not true anymore.
You're not getting the beneficial bacteria and fungi that you need within yourself. And sometimes we don't even know where our food is grown. Is it a healthy microbiome or not? I have no idea. And most people do not.
So Biome AI is more sort of a personalized gut health agent for you, a companion where you can discuss your microbiome, but on top you can dump your metrics like, you can take a screenshot of your sleep metrics, how many steps you walked, your VO2 max, back labels of the food you consumed. It's just dump images. It's a multimodal agent. You can talk to it about how you felt today. That's basically where the AI is moving towards.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Desci Pilled. I'm your host, Ryan Bethencourt, and I'm delighted today to have Kishore from MicrobiomeDAO. We're going to dive into some really fascinating stuff about the microbiome. And just one quick reminder, this is never medical or financial advice. We cover all sorts of interesting topics. This is edutainment, and we're here to really learn and grow together. So as we explore the frontiers of Desci, Kishore, welcome. Welcome to the Desci Pilled podcast.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be on Desci Pilled podcast. I've been watching a bunch of your podcasts, and it's really inspirational and motivational. And I never realized I would be here and doing this with you. It's a nice experience to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kishore. Appreciate it. And I think we're all kind of learning as Desci is starting to emerge. Just incredible things are starting to happen. And I think, most recently there was one of the episodes that went viral, and I think people are just starting to find out about what is Desci, right? And I think where you are and where you're positioned with MicrobiomeDAO, I mean, it is the frontier of science too, right? It's we talk about crypto sometimes, but really it's about exploring the frontiers of science. And so, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and, what inspired you, and then MicrobiomeDAO as well?
Definitely, yeah. So I'm Kishore. You can call me Kiho. I go by the name Kiho. And I'm basically a biotech engineer. I started my journey as a biotechnologist, and then eventually, entered big pharma as a scientist doing drug dev, probiotics dev, and stuff like that. And then I got fed up and wanted to see what's beyond this conveyor belt, right? What's happening in industry. So I moved into academia to dig deep into this sort of, my curiosity, explore this endless path, and then eventually ended up, being, realizing that, okay, academia kind of kills the curiosity that I wanted to nurture. So I exited out of that and moved into the venture building space, founded a startup, did venture building for Molecule and bunch of other sustainability eco-tech companies in Germany. And then, eventually then ended up into the Desci ecosystem, now building my mission for MicrobiomeDAO as a Desci narrative. Yeah.
And Kiho, what would you say would be with academia? Because I know a lot of our viewers are, either doing their PhD, their postdoc, they're in academia, they're professors, are in that world. What would you say? Because, a lot is changing with academia, right? And I think for many of us, we still very much value the role that academia plays, but it's also challenging too, right? To explore your curiosity and your ideas, especially if it's set in fixed funding paths.
I would say it's a very subjective experience. It wouldn't be the same for everyone in academia. Some people really try to, find their path and navigate it very well. It was difficult for me because I kind of got fed up with the systemic, hierarchical systems where, the pressure kind of drips down from the funding agencies back to the professors being highly just, motivated to write grants rather than doing science and interacting with their lab mates. And then it trickles down to the postdocs, PhDs, and the undergrads and grads are the ones who really feel the pressure to a humongous level. So I used to go through this for a long time, very long time, underpaid, overworked, and eventually not being able to explore the things that I wanted to explore because the system turned to be quite rigid at this time as we are speaking. So I thought like, what could be an alternative to still keep my curiosity alive and experiment with the science that I wanted to. So then I chose the path of citizen scientist, right? Like doing new innovations and inventions with my fermented drinks, new probiotic supplements, and stuff like that. And basically, I'm a citizen scientist, still doing science, but experimenting it on myself and my friends and family. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's always fun. I think for those of us that are running the experiments ourselves, it's interesting, right? It really is. Like I take rapamycin, I take various different supplements that have been linked with longevity in preclinical studies, right? And so that's still a bit of an experiment, like these things. And so you kind of tell us the story of like finding out about DeSci and then eventually starting MicrobiomeDAO.
Oh, that's a long journey. I would start this with Germany because that's when I, moved for my master's, being fed up with the big pharma. It's not like truly that I'm fed up with big pharma, rather than, I've been working deep into this probiotic industry, and then what I realized was most of the products are kind of heavily pushed by the marketing dollars, not backed up with real science. The reason being this: if you look at like an average probiotic product, you can expect to have 30 to 40% variance in the ingredients that they claim to have, right? And it's a lot of hype over this market, right? Like, of course, I agree probiotics work, but it's not worth the hype. So that's the main reason why I exited out of the pharma job, and then I moved into academia. And this is when I went to Germany for my master's. And like I come from a sun blasting country, and not seeing sun for 3 months, like full of overcast weather and temperatures going below zero is kind of very different environmental pressure for me. And then I went into serious clinical depression. It's basically quite common in these expats who come to Germany, who are not used to such cold climates. Yeah, and this
And
is where
and,
when I
and Keho,
realized
I think a lot of people experience that, right? The seasonal affected disorder. Even people that are from
exactly.
there,
Yeah,
they've
yeah,
for those of you that haven't seen this or heard about this seasonal affected disorder, it actually affects a lot of people when it's just dark and gray all the time.
it
And I've
is.
seen it. I've lived in cold gray countries before, and it's challenging.
It is. But I think eventually you will learn how to cope up. You can take vitamin D supplements to kind of mitigate this effect. And if you have a very good social circle and a good, protocol in terms of diet and lifestyle, you can mitigate this. But imagine I'm a student there, doing like bunch of part-time jobs to sustain myself, and then in the middle of this, I need to do my labs and courses and all of this. So this kind of, the pressure and the environmental pressure pushed me into this depression, I guess. And so when I realized that I could not move out of my bed and do like even a daily routine thing, that's when I realized, okay, this is really affecting my life at a deeper level. And my dad usually used to say this word, there is a saying that when you take right kind of food, there is no need for medicine. But if you don't do that, then your medicine will become your food, right? You'll be taking just a bunch of drugs and supplements to sustain yourself, right? So this kind of stuck with me from my childhood. Always when I get sick, I try to do it by, fixing, taking supplements. If I get cold, I'll try to take quercetin and zinc. So I do these side of things to kind of support my body to fight. But when it goes out of hand, of course, I take medicine to come out of it. So this is when I stumbled across microbiome again in my life, because then I started to, experimenting how microbiome works and what sort of diet really improves it. Then came this fact, I don't know, somewhere on a Instagram feed or somewhere, it says like, 90% of serotonin, the happy hormone, is produced in your gut, stimulated by these bacteria. That 90% is what really, caught me. Because if they have said 40%, it wouldn't have caught me. But 90% is a lot. So I just stopped for a moment and then I realized, okay, this must be something, right? Like it's almost all of your neurochemistry relating to happiness is produced in your gut. 90% is a lot. So then I thought, I should dig more into it. Then I came across a lot of BS in the market. It's just temporarily pushed by these companies using their marketing dollars to prove just their probiotic works, right? They do a random trial with a small intervention with very loosely tied endpoints to prove that their drug works. So this is where my journey really started to bring more awareness about microbiome. And I this journey gave me a lot. I came out of depression eventually. I started experimenting with bunch of new fermented foods, lifestyle hacks, and all of that to bring my gut back to normal and boost that neurochemical production within my system. I thought, why not, like, help others to do the same? So I founded a startup called Gut Mood. In German, you can also read it as Good Mood, because GUT is good. So it goes both ways. So yeah, this good mood like is more about, fixing your lifestyle, building new habits in a gamified way to improve your mental health, right? Like pumping all those neurochemicals without relying on external substances. So, but this attempt was it didn't like really pay off, but I learned a lot, which I'm still applying to Microbiome DAO at the moment. And now I would close the story in a way that this is exactly when I came across molecules. A venture fellow program. I started into DSci. I went through this intensive course about DSci. I was one of the first batches of venture fellows, and then eventually worked on deal flow with a lot of bunch of catalyst projects, which eventually got into the market. And then I became a consultant there. So now you can imagine I'm deep into the microbiome trench and deep into the DSci, almost a foot soldier for DSci. It all come together. So my natural next evolutionary step is to, build something that combines both worlds that I really, enjoy. So that's the birth story of Microbiome DAO.
And hence MicrobiomeDAO, right? So
Hence
I think
Microbiome DAO.
you covered a lot of really interesting things there, right? And I think part of it is really focusing on the entrepreneurial journey, going from scientist to entrepreneur. It's hard. Entrepreneurship is really hard. Science doesn't really train us to start companies or start businesses. It's just not something that any kind of formal training in science tends to do. And then you end up kind of fumbling your way through and then learning. And often it's harder because you don't have the training. And I think what's really interesting is now coming as, a second time entrepreneur, right? Starting Microbiome DAO, which is, it's a really interesting fusion of a lot of things, right? It's not pure entrepreneurship because it's science, it's community, it's crypto, it's a lot of different things. It's a frontier. As you're thinking about this and as you're thinking about like the global community, how are you thinking? Because you've seen a lot, right? Like you've been involved since the early start with Molecule DAO. You've been involved in DSci now for a couple of years. How are you thinking about like DSci as a category? Like where are we today? Where are we going? And then we'll dive into Microbiome DAO.
Yeah, so to me, primarily, DSci is something that fixes that integral part of why we do science, right? Like why we need science. So when you see, when you ask someone where does science happens, people usually think of, a weird lab or like with a lot of gadgets and scientists buried in their lab coats and goggles doing all these experiments. But these are like real people who kind of build those solutions that touches us in everyday life, right? But if you ask who is funding the science to anyone in the world, their instant response would be, yeah, the government is funding, right? The NIH, the NHS, they are funding. But if you go deep into this, it is actually us, citizens, who are funding the science. It's our tax-paying dollars, right? Like which goes for funding science. So we have the rights to ask those right questions, to invent solutions that really make sense for us, and not like
And Kehoe, you bring
pondering
up a
upon
great
a.
point. You bring up a really excellent point. If we're the ones funding science and we know government is terrible at allocating capital, really inefficient at allocating capital, if you cut out the middleman, which is essentially the government, what does directly citizen funded science look like, right? Like that, I think that for a lot of people, it's like, oh, you can actually do science more efficiently. Oh, right. It's like intrinsically we don't, because I think you're right. Like most people don't realize that the NIH, the NSF, most of the funding is not really increasing. In fact, it's decreasing if you inflation adjust it, right? That's the mind boggling thing. Actually, funding for science, and it's not just the current administration. This has been happening for decades, where there's just not much more money coming for science, if inflation adjusted. And so there has to be some other path, right? And clearly science has benefits for all of us, for our world, for us, for our health span, our lifespan, our, the animals, the planet, all of that sort of stuff, for space. And so you kind of are seeing this as directly funded science, which we do anyway, right? Just cutting out the middleman, which is the government.
It is not just funding, it also creates a dialogue between the citizens and the scientists, right? Like, imagine a community where scientists, citizens, developers, builders, marketeers all coexist within a community so they can innovate solutions that work for them, right? So you don't need to go for external things to like external organizations to really help you support building this tool. A DAO is something like that, right? I usually derive my analogy from coral reefs. So a DAO is like a coral reefs, like individual polyps working on their own to build that sustenance. So the entire coral reef sustains. So it's basically communities within community. You have community of expert researchers, you have funders, you have citizens, patients. So all of them are driven by a focal point, which is a goal towards either longevity or towards gut health or towards hair loss. It could be a bunch of different aspects, right? But you can source your expertise within the community because the community has a skin in the game because they are intrinsically driven to push the frontier for that particular focal point. So I think that's where it gets interesting for Desci, putting forth community as the first, right, and building that dialogue between all these different agencies that help build a product that we really use in our daily life. Yeah.
You're right. I love that analogy because for me, I'm obsessed actually with coral reefs and rainforests. I'm a biologist by background, and the fact that these ecosystems create themselves, right? Like if you destroy a coral reef, it won't just pop back up again because it created itself. Same thing for rainforests, right? They create their own. I mean, they create their own weather, right? Like rainforests, the reason it rains in rainforests is because of the forests themselves, the perspiration that comes back down again. You wipe out the rainforest, you dry out that land. And so it's a really interesting analogy. So we are creating self-reinforcing, self-growing communities, which is really fascinating, right? Because especially if the science becomes products and revenue, that can fund further products and revenue for people, right? So Microbiome DAO. So what's the big vision for Microbiome DAO? So you're here, you're about to launch, right? And possibly when this airs, you'll have launched. So tell us about the big vision for Microbiome DAO.
So yeah, like if you look at microbiome as a field of research or field of science, it's heavily funded. So there is no doubt in that. Like there's a lot of funding going into microbiome research. Even like it has become a trend that if you write something about microbiome, you might, have higher citation and readers. So that sort of momentum is what is happening around microbiome. And on the other side, you also see the industry booming with a lot of these testing kits, probiotics, psychobiotics, prebiotics, and all these supplement industry around microbiome. So we thought like, of course, there's a bunch of funding going on both directions. Where should we work, right? So all these things, even if you go kind of zoom out, the higher level, you have longevity industry, you have women health and all of that. All of them need something which is very important for microbiome to be connected. That is the data. So we are kind of supplying that data layer and the community layer. So I usually tell my co-founders that we are not a company or we are not a startup here to innovate new things. We are basically an organization helping to build that coordination layer for microbiome research to make it more affordable, equitable, and accessible for the rest of the world. And we are kind of focused to build things that matters, right? Like not to ponder upon things rather than, maximum utilization of capital in the best possible way so that it benefits the users who are, invested into this. Yeah.
Amazing. And, I know that we covered on, I'd love to cover some of the emerging areas in the microbiome because I think a lot of people are super interested, maybe just starting to realize what's going on with the microbiome, right? We know that our guts are basically, miniature pharmaceutical factories. They keep us well, they keep us healthy in numerous ways, many of which we don't even fully understand. And everyone's microbiome is actually incredibly different, which is surprising for a lot of people. But the point that the gut brain axis is something that's really new and emerging. That insights, I read recently about the appendix. Most people thought the appendix was totally useless. You just cut it out, and it turns out actually no, it's a regulator of our microbiome in our gut, and appears to it's full of neurons and things like that. So like it is shocking how little we have known about our gut and the interaction between our gut, our microbiome, and our minds and our bodies. And, I would love to what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your thoughts on the appendix, which, we've been told for a long time was useless. And now all of a sudden, by the way, unsurprisingly, I think for those of us that study biology doesn't like to keep useless things, right? You get a mutation, you get rid of it eventually, right? If it doesn't increase evolutionary fitness. And so the appendix turns out to be an important thing. And so I don't know if do you have any thoughts about that? Gut-brain axis, the appendix as a new important area of research. Is that something that you've thought about or looked at?
Yeah. I would just kind of trying to draw a picture for our listeners here to understand how deep is microbiome, because we usually just think about gut as microbiome, gut microbiome, but it's not just that, right? It starts from the soil. So we need to ask this basic, simple question: how did this gut microbiome or all these bacteria ended up in my gut in the first place? It's basically from the food that we consume and the environment that we interact with. So imagine if you grow a carrot in a soil where there is no microbiome, and you grow a carrot with a soil with full of microbiome. The nutritional, abundance within that particular carrot differs to I would say 20 to 70% variance. And this being studied by, there is a region agricultural movement, and they basically found out in US markets, there is a 70% variance within the carrots found in different supermarkets, within the nutritional, abundance. So doctors might say, okay, eating carrots are good, but that's not true anymore. Like, you need to know where this carrot is grown, right? So then the microbiome travels from the soil to the plant, and then to the animal, or to our gut, to the oral microbiome or different things. And this is how we acquired all these microbiome in the first place. So now what we did is basically we cut down all these interesting microbes coming from our environment. We cut down these roots by basically, heavily relying on processed foods, which are primarily designed to ward off any sort of microorganisms, right, to preserve it. So because of this nature, we reduce the intake of those good microbes, the beneficial microbes. And then once it goes in, it doesn't just, helps with digestion and stuff, it does a lot more. It trains your immune system. It talks to your brain because gut seems to have the next largest set of nerve endings next to the brain. So there is a highway connecting brain and gut. It's called vagus nerve. So this is where the communication happens. So imagine if you eat burgers and fries for these, let's say, next 2 days, then you are basically promoting those bacteria which thrive on those burgers and fries, the components present in burgers and fries. And because of that, those are like kind of fighting for the space within your gut, and they grow a lot, and then they are going to send signals to your brain to eat more French fries, to eat more burgers, to eat more pizza, right? So the problem is not with the pizza, burger, or the French fries. It's about how processed or how fresh it is, right? So if you make a fresh French fries, it still have a good amount of nutrients for your gut. So you are fine tuning your gut based on what you take in, and it kind of controls your mood. It's a loop, right? So this is why I call Microbiome Matrix, which is an invisible field that's controlling us. I think to the major extent. And gut-brain axis is something quite interesting here, as it seems to work both ways. If you are depressed, your gut feels the depression. But if you don't have the right kind of bacteria, then probably you get a higher chance of getting a depression. So it goes both ways.
Huh. Keyword, that's absolutely fascinating. I guarantee the vast majority of people are not thinking about if the soil is sick, if the soil is deficient of your microbiome, not even nutrients, which we know is already an issue. It's of the right microbiome. If it's sick and doesn't have the right microbiome, you're not getting the beneficial bacteria and fungi that you need within yourself, right? And so, like, sometimes we don't even know where our food is grown, right? Where did those walnuts you just ate come from, right? Like, one of the things that kind of surprised me, it's like I seem to be buying walnuts from China. I'm not sure why I'm buying walnuts from China, but I go to Sprouts, and that's the only selection they have. They're from China. I looked, and you're like, what are the soil conditions where those walnut trees are growing? What are they like? Are they good? Are they bad? I was thinking more around heavy metals or various other issues, but I hadn't thought, well, what is the microbiome? Is it a healthy microbiome or not? I have no idea. And most people do not. And yet, when people get sick, we're not looking at the what's coming in, which is, the nutrients, the microbiome. We're just not doing that. Right. And so it's just obvious now, the way that you're explaining it, we have a lot of work to do on our food system to understand the microbiome of our food system, where it's grown and how it affects it. It makes sense, right? Where, you put someone in a deficient nutrient place, and it causes issues for their long-term health. Same for our food, which I think, there's probably movement there that's going to start, right? Like looking at where food is grown and understanding the microbiome. I don't think that exists yet. I've never seen it. I don't know if you've seen it. But I think that's something that's definitely coming. So that's all of that is super interesting, and I agree the microbiome is vast. And so, as we're exploring, yeah, go ahead.
We have reached a crisis point here. That's quite important to emphasize that crisis point. Due to all these sort of modernization, globalization, urbanization, we have lost almost 40% of our traditional or gut microbiome that our ancestors used to have. So cut down by 40% is like you're working at half your real efficiency, right? So this might be the reason or a reason for increase in different sort of metabolic diseases, or even like the mental disorder rates could be kind of linked to the gut, because we basically wiped out half of our microbiome because we are losing on those genetic outputs. So the numbers are somewhere around, we have 9 million bacterial genes compared to 20,000 genes in the human genome. So that's the kind of difference we have. So each genes have a different function. So it's like compare the genetic output out of those 9 million genes and compare it to the 20,000, which is the human genome that we have. And cutting down it to half is there the crisis point. So we call it the exodus of microbiome. And because of this reason, it's quite important and a pressing need to fix this crisis at this point. To try to, if not try to bring back, let's try to save what we have right now.
Hmm. I think you're exactly right, and that I think there are a lot of people that are trying to understand and have a feeling that something's wrong with their microbiome, right? They already, like, you talk to people who have health issues, they'll tell you that, whether it's mental health, whether it's in digestive health, some other issues, they'll tell you, I think something's wrong with my gut. Like, they know it. They just don't know how to prove it or how to understand what's going on in their gut microbiome.
True. Even I think I was listening a podcast where my co-founder attended, and the host was saying he took probiotics for his back pain, and then back pain went away. It's basically fixing your inflammation. That's it. Like, the probiotics kind of work to fix your inflammation, and you got rid of the pain. So it works in different ways. You ingest something, suddenly your skin starts to glow, and then it's something like probiotic can do a lot of different magic. Yeah.
I mean, it's wild. So as we're talking about microbiome DAO, we're talking about, I know you wanted to cover, and I think it's actually very topical. The biome AI space, I think, is something that, we're now entering an era of agents. I think that for
Yes.
those of us involved in DeSci, but outside of DeSci, AI is everywhere. AI is going to transform science for sure. I think people are underappreciating the positive benefits. James, one of the co-founders of Bio, we had a great conversation about agentic science, and how it's really going to be transformative for the sciences. Would love to hear, like, how you're thinking about using AI and the Biome AI initiative.
Yeah. So as you said, like, AI will be the next meta, in my opinion. For Biome AI specifically, the journey started, from my experience with health apps. So I've been trying to build these sort of wellness apps and looked into different products in digital therapeutic sector, and it also stems from the pressure of funding, because we are a community-driven organization, and we have limited resources. We need to make the best bet possible to build tools. So we thought, like, investing our capital on digital front could be the first best investment, and probably scale more towards, infrastructural projects. So that's the reason why we started with AI agents. But after, jumping into this, we realized, okay, there is a lot this agents can do. So Biome AI specifically solves that one problem that most of the health apps ignore. Even if you look at the health apps market, like, I guess 75% of the companies have gone bankrupt in the last 4 years. The issue being that you are trying to solve an subjective issue with an objective input and output mechanism, right? And you have a very rigid interface within health apps, like, which can only take in certain inputs. It can only work within that rigid interface that's been designed by the devs. It can only produce certain levels of charts, and it cannot go beyond that. So we thought, like, why not break this with the AI agent? Let's give out a blank canvas and let the people explore and create their own charts, own sort of metrics, right? And then create that module to dump any sort of information. So Biome AI is currently trained with around 1,000 plus scientific papers, scientific literature, which is basically building that knowledge graph, sort of a RAG for this particular AI agent. And it derives its knowledge from that, but also from vast knowledge that's outside these 1,000 curated articles. And then on the other side, you have another knowledge graph, which is, which is more sort of an eternal evolutionary knowledge graph, which is built by the users themselves. So whenever you interact with Biome AI, let's say you start with your, microbiome report or anything, it's going to build that map for you. It's going to start and build a personalized knowledge graph for you as a user. So what you have now is a knowledge graph that's driven primarily by scientific domain knowledge, which is more sort of, observatory, analytical, and all of that. And you have more sort of personalized user-driven knowledge graph, which is more application oriented, right? Like, we know from here which for which demographics and which population this intervention works and this doesn't work. So this is what is very innovative here. And the best part is, if you have taken a microbiome test in your life, Usually the testing companies send out a report which is 50 pages long, because you are sequencing basically trillions of bacteria, trillions of microorganisms. So this 50-page long report is super hard for normal user to understand, right? So usually you need an expert to make sense of it. Even your physicians cannot read this document. So because of this, we thought, okay, let the AI do this job. It's going to digest that 50-page worth document and present it to you in a sort of a microverse map, right? You can navigate into it. You can pick that specific bacteria that produces serotonin or dopamine, and you can fine tune it by feeding in the right diet that promotes that bacteria to produce more serotonin for you. So that is possible with Biome AI. So Biome AI is more sort of a personalized gut health agent for you, a companion where you can discuss your microbiome, but on top you can dump your metrics, like you can take a screenshot of your sleep metrics, or your how many steps you walked, your VO2 max, and all of that, even your back labels of the food you consumed. It just dump images. It's a multimodal agent. You can talk to it about how you felt today. Probably after a week it will replay it to you to give you that subjective experience of what is happiness, because most of the health apps fail in this mental health sector, because you ask users about a subjective issue, which is your mood, right? My mood changes from happiness to sadness, different things depending on whom I meet, what I eat, and how the weather is, right? Bunch of different things. So you cannot kind of answer this in subjective way. Okay, I feel relaxed, focused, or happy, energized. That doesn't work. So what we do is let you record your voice for 2 minutes. Generally, you can just talk about it. How was your day and all of that. We'll replay it to you after a week, so that now you can decide for yourself from your voice that whether you feel happy or more stressed, right? This is the self-reflection angle that we are trying to sell to the users, so that the user
Huh.
can subjectively decide whether they are happy or not. Instead of I am telling, okay, my metrics show that you are happy, right? That doesn't usually work. So give them that subjective experience is what Biome trying to happen. Yeah.
Yo, I absolutely love this idea of, I mean, for those of us in the sciences, it's actually pretty scary, right? Because you're basically talking about taking a bunch of unstructured data, throwing it at a model and saying, figure it out. And,
Figure it
and
out.
that is a tailored plan, which, we haven't really seen that, right? Like we haven't seen, you don't go to the doctor and go, I have all of these issues wrong with me. And by the way, I talked to my best friend and he really depressed me with this conversation. And, and then I walked the dog and I petted the dog licked me on the face. We don't have those conversations with our doctor. We go with one specific issue. And to have a multimodal agent, which by the way, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I first go to an AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Grok or one of the other AIs. I first go to them before I go to the doctor, because usually I get a much better, much deeper response, and I can explore the possibility space of what might be going on with me, right? Whether it's advice, whether it's medical advice. I know they're not supposed to be for medical advice. And so taking all this unstructured data, really interesting, because what happens when the AI, which is typically better than the average doctor, right? Like the average doctor or the average scientist, because it's teams of scientists, teams of doctors and specialist data, what happens when they get your data and analyze it? And I think that's a really interesting thing, I think, for all of us. It's unstructured data, finding needles in a haystack where we may not know needles exist.
True. Because what this would evolve into is something sort of hypothesis tested by users themselves and putting this out. So we have something called N of 10 trials, which is sort of inspired by Brian Johnson's N of 1 experiments or towards longevity. So we picked this N of 10, which is again like statistically a smaller sample size, but it would still give you a sort of a validation or validation towards a particular hypothesis. So how we do it is we put people together in groups of 10 and let it free flow. That's it. You just record bunch of metrics, everyday metrics. There is no condition, but just there is one condition that this information is a must for these 10 days. You need to talk about your mental health for 10 days, right? That's it. So with this, let's see what the AI would come up with. A hypothesis looking into this knowledge graph superimposed on the scientific knowledge graph. And then the agent comes up with a hypothesis saying that, hey, I looked at these 10 people who happen to be crypto traders, and they also reported their, trading performance was so and so on these days. I found there is a link between their gut bacteria and their trading performance, right? So this is what the Biome AI's future would look, right? Trying to build these hypotheses at a scale. And then you can basically take these hypotheses to a prediction market and leave it to the users, to predict what is interesting. Probably for users, a hypothesis like whether olive oil really works for me is a question, right? Whether black seed oil really does those effects is a question, right?
Yeah.
So these things could be kind of curated by the prediction markets, and those funding could be channeled into, test this at a larger scale with N of 100, N of 1,000, right? So Biome AI is that coordination layer for you to do these things. That's basically where the AI is moving towards.
Sure, I love that. And by the way, shout out to Brian Johnson's olive oil. It's delicious. The Blueprint diet, it is delicious. But how do we know? How do we know that it's actually
Yes.
better? So I love this idea of it's like we can put it to the test with an N of 10, N of 100 test. Does it actually improve performance? Does it, how do you feel? I love this idea of being able to put all of these, interventions to a test with all of us together, right? Like, and there's definitely more than 10 people who buy Brian Johnson's olive oil, Blueprint Diet olive oil, which I do. It's actually good olive oil, but it tastes good. I don't know if it's better than other olive oils. And so Keo, you bring up a really interesting question. So as we enter this world, right, where AI is everywhere, we've already seen this happening in some other areas, especially art and, AI slopification. I'm sure you've heard of this term, right? In an era when there's almost infinite AIs, infinite agents, the amount of data and publications and everything, it's going to be impossible for a human mind to track. But then two, how do we ensure quality? Because, if you can have AIs that publish 1,000 papers every day or 10,000 papers every day, and 98% of it is slop, how do we find signal in the noise again? Like it's amazing, and it's really a scary challenge to filter all that information.
In fact, this kind of filters out the noise, to be honest, because all those questions that we have, the doubt is still relevant, because the question is how we would, use our capital more efficiently to test what hypothesis is really, meaningful for that particular community to test, right? Like using their capital. And here, the AI could give that sort of first set of validation. That's why I still call it a hypothesis. It's not even a proven hypothesis. It's just a hypothesis creation mechanism, but it is more sort of a user-driven hypothesis rather than scientific knowledge-driven hypothesis. So there is a term. So once this hypothesis kind of proves to have a positive signal, then you need to take it through the traditional routes of, probably it could be a clinical trial or even a decentralized trial, at-home trials, where you enforce all those sort of regulatory mechanisms and, properly engage with your participants and make it happen. So I would see this filters out all those studies, all those questions that we have, and then makes us, kind of set our focus on the questions that really matters and happen to have a positive outcome for sure, right? So that's the idea behind this. So you can eventually take these hypotheses into an IPT, and then you can fund it. You can take it long road, like if it comes with the
and for our listeners, the IPT is patents. So on-chain patents, right? And you basically can patent something, take it on chain, and develop it, right?
And you become a co-owner of it. You tokenize the asset. Yeah. So you can build your next probiotic stack. Probably it'll be the next Brian Johnson's blueprint sort of for gut, curated by 10 people or 100 people. So probably this is going to have a different effect. And it's also going to help in a different way, that to curate all of this, right? As you said, there's a lot of information that's going to come out of this. To curate this, you can bring scientists into the loop, humans into the loop, even citizens into the loop, because now you are giving them tools which let them do science, right? Tools like Aubrey AI, tools like Biome AI. So this gives you the analytical capacity to ponder upon something, because you don't need to have a lab. You can just talk about it, you know, keep talking about it and find out what works.
Amazing. I think that's going to be really fun. And for those that have not used Aubrey AI, you can actually go onto X and actually just at Aubrey AI ask a question. It's the first agent that's come out from the bio protocol, and it is awesome for longevity. It really is awesome. Like the level of detail you get back and the insights, and it's modeled off of Aubrey de Grey, who's a really good friend, scientist focused on longevity. He's been doing this for decades, focused on accelerating new therapies to extend human lifespan. But the responses are fantastic from these agents, and so every year we're going to see 10x improvements, right? As AI improves, which is just, I don't know how to predict where this future goes because it's just so exciting, so amazing. I know that some people are AI doomers. They're like, oh, AI. It's like once we have AGI, once we have super, like humans will coexist with the tools and the intelligences that we build. Like I am pro AI and accelerating as fast as we can to help us all, right? For all of humanity, and then eventually all sentient beings. And I know there's another initiative coming, right? I think this is the beauty of working with crypto and smart contracts. Could you tell us a bit more about your Poop to Earn initiative? What is that?
True, yeah. Poop to Earn is basically a NFT collectible project, but again, like embedded in deeply into science. If you look at gut health in general, the first indicator of your gut health is basically your poop, right? But we just discard it as a bio waste. We don't even look at it. So we thought, like, why not use this bio waste, which is a zero friction effort, to take a picture of your dump and then use this data to train the models to predict your gut health, metrics, right? So this is the idea behind this. Basically, what you do is you need to take a picture of your dump every time you go, and then based on the stool type that you kind of do, we give you monsters. So these are like cool monsters we are revealing in the MicrobiomeDAO X right now. So you can get these monsters and you can grow these monsters eventually. So how do you grow it? You need to feed them, right? So you need to feed them with your diet information. So this diet information is basically gonna make the monsters nurture, and in the background we are connecting your diet to your poop, so that this is an indicator for your gut health that we are trying to understand. So if you keep growing these, or if you miss a day, you might end up getting a zombie monster. So if you get more zombie monsters, you need to clean your toilet. You need, to work hard to clean the toilet. So it's best not to, skip that. And once you grow this, you can fuse these monsters to grow an active monster, which has other functionalities. It has, arguments and accessories on top of it, which you can purchase. And if you collect more active monsters, you might be entering the league of golden monsters. These are metamorphed, mutated golden monsters, the real OG monsters. And these monsters are NFT collectibles. So you need to work your way through to collect these NFTs. And once you collect these monsters tend to have something called a charge. And using these charge, you can enter a raffle to get a free microbiome test, which is $50 to $250 worth.
Amazing.
So basically we connect diet, poop, into the microbiome. So eventually, because microbiome tests are quite expensive at the moment, we are trying to bring down the cost. So until then, we are giving it as a giveaway for your positive effect towards your gut health. But the model will also learn this information about you. And then at a point, without even looking at your gut microbiome test, just by looking at your poop and diet, it can inform about your gut health. So the least effort that you can take to understand about gut health is Poop to Earn project.
I love this. I love these gamified projects that actually help us improve our health. Whether it's walking, running, exercising, meditating, pooping. I think they're really fun. And for those of us that are crypto natives, we like NFTs, like we like collecting art. It's kind of a fun thing as well. And so I myself am a big fan of collecting crypto native art as well. And so all very exciting. And I know, your emphasis is really global, right? I think you're based in India. Your co-founder, Katia, is based in Brazil and Ukraine and kind of Europe. I think the global approach is really interesting. Is there anything you like to share with us about that global approach?
Yeah, definitely. Specifically for microbiome, it does make sense to go global because if you look at the current microbiome industry, 71% of the data comes from the Western population, primarily from US, Canada, and European Union. So if you would build a model using this knowledge, then the model is not going to be applicable for the global population. So the idea was to then, decentralize this out, and even the team is decentralized in a way. Our other co-founder is from Thailand, the other one is in Lisbon, the other one is in Brazil, so I'm in India. So we are decentralized across the globe, and we are, dividing and conquering these different regions. The idea is to go look into the microbiomes that are specific to these different, geographies, and mine those interesting microbes which we haven't seen in all those databases, right? Because a recent study just digged into the Honduran village. They found 200 new species, interestingly. So imagine if we would start digging into all global population, what sort of valuable resources that we would uncover. So that's the reason for making it go global and also to keep it decentralized.
Yeah, I mean, I love this focus on the global and finding, hidden gems everywhere. Like my favorite example, and I have this pet idea, hypothesis, which, I take rapamycin, which is, I take it off label as a longevity drug, right? But it was originally discovered in I think 1950s on Easter Island, the place that has all of those stone heads with an extinct civilization. And I have this hypothesis that actually, that microbe that creates rapamycin actually came from the microbiome of that civilization. And so it makes me wonder, I'm like, what was going on with that civilization? Really fascinating that they might have had a microbe that was extending their lifespan potentially. Like, fascinating, right? Like, I have no way to prove it. It's a hypothesis. I have this like kind of, but imagine all of the other things. Like in these long-lived societies, we know that there are blue zones. What would we discover across these blue zones across the world, or these healthier areas across the world? So I think it's a really fascinating area to explore. And Kehoe, if people are listening, they're like, I want to get involved. I care deeply about the microbiome. I care about my food. I care about the environment. I care about my own gut. I care about my health. How do they engage with you? Where do they find you? How do they get involved?
Sure. So you can find me on my Twitter. I go by the name Kehoe Red Ape. I am the red ape who ate the apple and just got mutated, start asking these questions. So yeah, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out through the official Twitter account, or through our website, microbiomeDAO.com. But eventually, like if you are super into it, and if you want to really lead this frontier, then the best place for you is our Biome Squad, which is our ambassador program. So this is basically a bottom-up community which naturally got built instead of us externally motivating people to do it. It's just people came together, uh, listening about us, listening about Microbiome DAO, and then they came and they contributed, and they're still doing it. Of course, like the Poop to Earn project is built by our Biome Squad. The Biome AI is built by our Biome Squad. So these are people who are working without even any salary, like they're just here for building those tools and being part of this important movement in our history with Microbiome DAO. So yeah, please hit me up, or hit anyone from the team, or like if you find a Biome Squad member, it's well and good. They kind of organize and maintain their own squad, so they can bring you into the squad. So trying to get as decentralized as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. And as a reminder, sometimes things that start small with small fringe communities become massive and world changing. And so very excited. I have a feeling Microbiome DAO will become one of those. Kehoe, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us at Desci Pilled. Can't wait to explore the microbiome together with you at Microbiome DAO. Bye all. Have a great day.